years or 15 years funding. That funding is very, very limited in its availability to banks. We believe that funding is in the country with pension funds, and that funding comes from foreign investors. Now, what is the role that banks can play as an intermediary in attracting the funding from the pension fund or from the foreign investors and turning that around into the industrialization projects? I think there is absolutely an opportunity, and more and more banks are looking at playing the role of investment banker and investment advisory services, so there'll be the intermediary between those type of funding. I also believe that at one point in time it would be very relevant for the banks, the commercial banks and the pension funds and the government to actually sit around the table and see how we can actually get to the point that more long-term funding that is solely available at the pension fund can actually make it into, bankable projects that the banks can actually structure and provide to the industrial sector. There's another element of it, and as commercial banks, we're quite often being challenged by the governor, who says, if we look at the money available in the country, and he says, I know exactly how much there is because I print it all. He says 60% of the money available in the country is underneath the mattresses and never reaches a bank account. Now, that is a lot of money. And if we were able to mobilize some of that liquidity underneath the mattresses into the formal financial sector and turn it around and use it for funding of SME enterprises, that would be an enormous opportunity for small business development. So yes, there is a task for banks, and be creative and attract that funding out of the market. It means that we have to be present, and I believe strongly that actually modern technology, internet and mobile banking, makes it possible for financial institutions to reach Tanzanians in sometimes very remote, far away places and provide mobile and internet banking services and mobilize some of that money. But it's not only up to the banks. I think it is partly also policies. It is partly the role of the TRA to some extent. And people need to feel the incentive that, if I put my money on a bank account, I get an adequate return. I read in the book the interesting comment about a bond market, and that in Tanzania we have a bond market, but 99.9% of that is government, so only 0.1% goes to corporates. And we're the lucky issuer at NMB Bank of one of those bonds. And so we issued a 3-year bond at a 13% interest. Now that attracted consumers because it is a guaranteed 13% annual interest for 3 years in a row. But we felt very strongly that 3 years was the maximum we could do. Now, it's a matter of education, and a lot of education has even gone into this bond issue prior to actually selling the bond to the public. But those are, the small-scale opportunities that we have, and that we should, use more to mobilize liquidity in the market.
Thank you so much, Ineke. I think what I'm hearing across the panel is importance